Welcome back to the Breaker Broz, and tonight we're going to go over the name, image, and likeness. But to kind of recap, we brought back Norman, our special guest, and he's going to kind of give us a little recap.
Thanks, Josh. This summer's been extremely busy for college football. Usually the summer is a good time to take a break before fall camp starts. But fall camp started this week. And for the past 2 months, uh, teams have been dealing with um, official visits and unofficial visits. Because of the COVID last year, there was a dark period. Students or prospective athletes were not allowed to go on campus for visits, except for maybe if you're in Arizona State, allegedly. Um, However, in addition to all the visits and camps this summer, you got this transfer portal thing. Now, there's always been a transfer portal, but there's been limitations to it, and players have had to sit out. And a lot of conferences you could not transfer within your conference. Now you've got a free transfer without having to sit out. So that adds an extra element to that. A five-star recruit just went early this summer from Ohio State to Alabama, where he'll start. That's unprecedented with the transfer portal. Usually, it's lower tier schools. Guys who are pretty good will go up to division or to a P5 or a Power 5 school. So all this is going on, and then we talked about the conference realignment thing that popped up last week. So as we kind of talked last week, not much has happened since. A lot of wheels are spinning, and a lot of people are making conversations behind the scenes, if you will. But really, nothing's happening. There's a lot of rumors going out there. And then the final thing that really, it came up in July was this name, image, and likeness, like Josh talked about. Now college athletes can brand themselves and make money off of their names. The school cannot set up the NIL monies, but the students can make money now off of their likeness. And now they're with the rest of the capitalism in this country. They can finally make some money, and the NCAA is finally losing that power over the student athletes. But part of that NIL that was fascinating, Quinn Ewers, the number one rated quarterback in the class of 2022 out of South Lake High School in Texas. He was going to finish his senior year early and transfer and go ahead and enroll in Ohio State in January. But because of the name, image, and likeness thing that come up in Texas, the legislation ruled that student athletes cannot make money off of their name under NIL for high school athletics. So Quinn Ewers has decided to go ahead and finish high school. He had a couple of classes I think he had to finish, and he's going to register at Ohio State at any time now. So it's unlikely, even though he's the top rated 2022 recruit, now he's going to reclassify in the 2021 class. It's unlikely that he'll start, yet this was attractive enough to him to go ahead and forego his senior year in high school and go ahead and enroll early into Ohio State and actually move up a class. So that tells you the type of money that is potentially out there that he's already, been offered. Nick Saban said his quarterback's making or has NIL deals up towards $1 million. It's not unheard of that Quinn Ewers will be very similar to that. Mm-hmm. So this name, image, and likeness thing, really, no matter who's talking about it, they really don't know how this is going to impact college athletics in the future. And if they do say they know, they're just guessing. I mean, this is, basketball, the whole 9 yards are involved in this.
Yeah.
And I think it opens up a can of worms for NIL potentially on, just everything, recruiting. Uh, what's your thoughts on that, Eric?
Well, I thought it was interesting to bring up the Quinn Ewers thing. So I went on his Twitter. So we like Twitter here at Breaker Bros. So maybe he'll get a few follows from this. Probably not. But here's the statement he released, and this basically recaps exactly what Norm just mentioned. So um, he starts off his note by saying he's leaving his Texas high school team his senior year um, because of not being able to profit off of his name, image, and likeness in high school, and he's going to go ahead and enroll at Ohio State. Um, there's some words here about obviously it's a big decision for any high school senior to skip that year. Uh, I couldn't imagine skipping my senior year of high school to start college.
I would have liked to have.
You would have? Not me. That was a good year.
So wait, time out. So is he enrolling into Ohio State early to collect
Yeah.
money? Okay, so that's because technically in Ohio, as a high school athlete, you still can't make money, right? It's just the fact that he's going to Ohio State.
Yes, because he's going to be a college student.
Right.
So here's what you're referring to, Josh. So there's our governor smiling, Mr. DeWine, and he signed an executive order uh, June 28th that allows. This says student athletes, but if you actually look at the executive order, it's student athletes enrolled in colleges and universities within the state of Ohio, right? And this executive order lays out kind of the rules, meets and bounds. So basically, um, limits what colleges can do in terms of name, image, and likeness prohibition. They like what they can enforce. Basically, it's making certain the old NCAA rules unlawful in Ohio, right? So it basically forces Ohio colleges to not enforce NCAA rules, and it kind of lays out some metes and bounds in terms of what the student athlete can do, right?
And the NCAA rule, I think it was early July. They pretty much did a blanket coverage that whatever the state law is what the NCAA will follow as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
So,
I guess so. Why wouldn't Texas do the same thing?
well, I'm sure the I don't know if the state of Texas has done the same thing for college students, but the high school adoption of this rule um, is not happening as quickly as the NCAA rule. And I think a lot of it has to do with what Norm said about, you know, nobody knows what's going to happen with all this, right? One of the things that are known is there's a lot of money involved with elite level football players, using the Quinn Ewers example, but
Yes.
definitely basketball players as well.
So Ewers was already committed to Ohio State.
Mhm.
He had planned on going, and he had planned on enrolling early. He just decided to forgo his high school senior year to go ahead and be able to cash in on some of this NIL.
No, I mean it makes sense. I would imagine if Texas had a similar rule and he was just happened to go to like UT, then I'm sure he would
Yeah,
just
he
stay in
would have.
Texas. But
Yeah.
it's interesting because I wonder. I guess the unknown is because the way it works is they can do it for like promotion, right? If you're a college athlete and a company wants to use your image or whatever your jersey or however they pursue it, it has to go through a company, right? It can't just be the college itself.
Right, and that's a good point to raise, and that's actually in the Ohio executive order. Um, So the first rule: no state institution, right, shall do any of the following: provide a prospective student athlete with compensation in relation to their name, image, and likeness, right? So I guess that's a prospective student. Um, and I guess the NCAA already prohibits that, right? So the NCAA, I don't think allows you to um, pay students, right? That you can't, like, if you're the uh, Ohio State University, you can't pay your
Correct.
football players
You,
for their name, image, and
right.
likeness.
You cannot legally pay the players to come play for your team. However, nothing says that a bunch of boosters can't get together and pick the top 10 recruits in the company and say, we will give you an endorsement. If you endorse our product, we will give you this money if you go to our school.
Well,
So
Yeah.
they can't make money off of like their jerseys and stuff because that belongs to the university unless they have a marketing agreement in place. But it would be like, Josh, we want you to endorse our used car lot over here, and we'll give you a 6 pack of Coke and $50 a week. That may not be great for a lot, but for some students, that would be good.
right.
Yeah. So you could, I mean, there is a distinction between what the university owns and what the player owns, right? So, like, this Quinn Ewers, if he does these car commercials, right, he couldn't wear his Ohio State jersey, you know, without their permission. Of course, their jersey's, pretty simple, right? So he could wear, kind of like a bootleg looking jersey with his number on it.
See, I
And
feel
he
like
can't say Ohio State, but you would have to know who he was, right?
well,
And then you could pay him.
as far as like the jersey, so like say, from what I understand, it's going to be based off more of the college, right? I would imagine the bigger colleges. For instance, I heard LSU. They have a pretty lenient policy. So, like, say if you are a player and you're trying to make that money off of the promotion, they do allow, from what I heard, LSU players to actually use their actual jerseys in that promotion. To me that's gonna be the wild card. So I feel like colleges that are like UC that maybe might be smaller, they can probably use that as like a negotiation tactic. Like, hey, like we're all about the player. You can use our jerseys. To whereas I'm sure some other bigger colleges where they probably want to prevent that because their brand is so strong.
Well, what Ohio State just did, actually, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, they just made an agreement with a company that handles NFL marketing for jersey sales. And now, for the first time ever, you can buy an Ohio State jersey with a current player's name and number on there. And then I think what they're doing is they're pulling a percentage of that money and distributing to all the students. Kind of a trickle down effect, because that was one of the things Coach Ryan Day was talking about, that he was not really concerned about, but wondering about. Certain players are going to get pretty good endorsement deals, but let's face it, it's going to be really tough for an offensive lineman to get any type of endorsement or NIL deal, if you will. So nobody knows. This will change daily from now on. But I tell you what, it will do. It'll keep certain teams now from handing out money in McDonald's bags to prospective players. But it's out in the
Allegedly.
open. But allegedly, but
Yeah.
it's out in the open now.
Yeah.
And
Also, I heard that it's more preferred to be in Chick-fil-A bags than McDonald's bags, but
well, Chick-fil-A is mostly in the South, so go figure.
But okay, so do we know so we know colleges can't pay the players directly, right? So, but can they
well,
work
in a
with,
way they can.
well, I guess my question is, can they help work with the players to help get like the promotions though? It's like, for instance, like I would imagine like, no, they can't.
No, they can't. But what they can do is and again, I'm kind of using some local knowledge here. all schools are not the same. All rules are not the same, which is kind of crazy. But for instance, Ohio State, they have a mechanism where if you, let's say you get an endorsement deal proposal, they will look at it for you to make sure that it's above board. It's, you know, they're not taking you down the road, the wrong road. So they will give you a a review of that and say, yeah, this is okay if you want to do it. But they cannot go out and say, Coca-Cola, I need you to sponsor these students. That's for what the boosters will do from now on, like they used to.
Yeah. Well, but what you're talking about, like the review and the help, this is it's in this executive order. So right. So they say basically that if there is a contract that the university has someone that that's supposed to be made aware of the contract, right?
Right.
And then they're allowed to review it, um, right? So and this is what's basically what's required. So it's not a big leap that if you have someone who is in the athletic department, let's say hypothetically, right, whose job it is to review these things and advise whether or not they break the rules, right? Then really that person, if you're going to be proactive, you would say, okay, you know, these are the types of things you can and cannot do, right? Which is all the guidance that the athletes need, right? And then of course when this first came out, I thought that okay, the biggest earners were going to be um people doing things like on OnlyFans and things like that. But there are prohibitions on what you can and cannot endorse, right? So
Right.
you can't endorse like alcohol, marijuana.
Right.
Um,
In Nevada,
eh,
you can't, like UNLV, you can't endorse casinos. There's, like you
yeah,
said, there's different things.
and in
Basically,
Ohio,
PG
you also
13.
can't endorse casinos and gambling, and then you have to basically keep it clean, right? So there are uh, it's not fully open, right? There are some limitations to it, and I do think that just hearing from within just the limited communication I get from the University of Cincinnati, they have indicated that they're trying to be proactive. They want to help the players, and I know that I've already seen on Twitter uh, Malik Van is selling T-shirts through a local T-shirt company, and then a basketball player has launched like a clothing line. So things like that. I don't know. So I mean, it's you know so they're going to be able to make money, and it is an unknown, but that's no fun, right? I think what do you think it's going to do to recruiting, Norm, for like Ohio State? Do you think it's going to help or hurt or
Uh, uh, I'll answer that, but I want to ask a question as well.
yeah,
I think the elite will continue to be the elite, and I'm afraid the gap will continue to grow between what's perceived as the top 60 programs and everyone else. But having said that, it's interesting. Um, as far as NIL opportunities, um, let's take Penn State, for example. They are in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There's not a lot of businesses, companies in the area that would potentially um, provide endorsement deals, but yet they're a national brand versus, let's say, Cincinnati. There's a ton of opportunities, but it is a pro town more than a college town. And let's face it, there's not a lot of pro athletes in Cincinnati that have endorsement deals that I know of. If they are, they're not that big. Versus, Ohio State. It's in the state capital. It's a large city, and guess what? It's a college town, really, at its heart. Um, I guess the question is, does this NIL, I mean, is it going to reshape the landscape to certain teams that have better opportunities that maybe aren't considered a destination, and maybe hurt teams that are currently destinations like Penn State that just doesn't have that opportunity for this kind of endorsement?
I think it's gonna be like a mix, right? Like it's like, you know, like you mentioned. I mean, most of our time talking about this one position, right? The quarterback position. So Quinn Ewers, number one recruit in the country, quarterback, Ohio State, right? Um, DJ Uyunglele, the quarterback at Alabama, that's got close to
Very,
$1
very
million.
good.
Thank you. Close to $1 million worth of endorsements. Starting quarterback Alabama, right? And we're talking like, okay, so I could see kind of the quarterback transfer market has been kind of hot for a while, right? Like I mean, like Russell Wilson was like the first that I can
Yeah,
think of, like major, like
as a graduate, yeah.
yeah, program changing college transfer, right? So if you can get those guys at like a place that couldn't recruit like that type of prospect coming out of college or coming out of high school, but then you have a team that can compete for winning. Say you can compete for winning the national championship, and you're a guy, and you know you're not going to start for Ohio State. You know, like whoever loses this three-way quarterback derby, right? Like couldn't let's use a random example, like couldn't like say UNLV, when you find out that who the third place guy in this quarterback competition is, say, hey, come out to Nevada, you can start, we can compete,
Absolutely.
and
And
you'll
and
make
this transfer
400,000.
portal thing is going to make that happen even more so, with the no penalties anymore on the one-time transfer. So
Right.
you potentially could have, each team will have one really good quarterback, and that's it, because everybody else will be transferred.
Yeah, I mean that's the question. Like, can you like it's like how much will you make through name, image, and likeness as a backup at Ohio State compared to a starter elsewhere? And like, but then again, it all depends on the situation too, right? Like, say you're the number two quarterback, but the guy ahead of you's going to the NFL next year. So do you just stay and wait to get that $1 million instead of taking the $100,000 at UNLV? Or I don't mean to insult UNLV. I don't know if that's a real number or not, but some lesser number now. I mean, I would guess college kids, you would go for the sure thing, the cash now, right? Because you could have a lot of fun in college as a starting quarterback with $100,000, right?
College kids would, but if you're really serious about going to that next level and you do want to play in the NFL and you've got that God-given ability to actually play in the NFL, NFL money will dwarf all this NIL stuff. So the ultimate golden ring is still to play in the NFL, and I think the road to the NFL and those big paydays is still through, let's face it, the top 10 or 15 programs in the country. That's if you really want to go to that next level.
Yeah. But you could see somebody, I mean, like Michigan has had a hard time getting a top level quarterback. Does this solve their problem, right? Because there's lots of money at Michigan. Could they just go pluck a guy that they need and plug him in if they've got an otherwise good
They've tried
team?
that. They've tried that for the last 3 years. I think once they change their coach at the end of this year, when he decides to leave, they'll be able to get a better quarterback up there.
Yeah, I knew that would get a reaction, but that wasn't what I was shooting for.
Well,
But I mean, but I agree. Like, it's just going to be a mix, right? It's hard to predict, but it's going to be really interesting. What were you going to say, Josh?
I think in the grand scheme of things, if you just back away, it's going to make things more competitive, and it's going to grow college football, and it's going to allow more players to stay an additional year. Now, I heard this report, and I'm not sure how accurate it is, but they said Reggie Bush, like this is the top 1% of the 1%. They said like he was a premier athlete, and they said at the time when he went to USC that he was potentially worth like $4 million in like advertisement or whatever. So like we're gonna get into interesting situations where if you're most likely a quarterback or whatever the premier position is that when they do get paid these like crazy amounts, it's gonna incentivize them to actually stay maybe a year or two longer. But I think in the grand scheme of things for the college, it's actually great. And it's actually going to grow college, and there's going to be those premier players where like they're actually really going to think, because like what you were saying, Norman, is that like they're you try to get to NFL as soon as possible, but now there's going to be this great issue where like maybe it's worth it to stay.
That's a good point. That's interesting. Let me ask you this: now the NFL deals with this weekly. There's a pretty good disparity in the pay between certain positions in the NFL and certain positions, like offensive lineman versus whatever, wide receiver. Do you think this will impact the college locker rooms now somehow if this kid from Texas with the long blonde mullet is all of a sudden making all this cash and you're a third-year starter for a four-time reigning Big Ten champion and you ain't getting jack? Do you see any issues with that, or are they all kind of adults and will do their business?
I think it definitely adds a different element to it. I think it's something they're not going to be used to. But I will say this thing, out of all the sports, I do feel like football is more institutional. So like I think people are like used to just doing whatever, but there is going to be that sense of jealousy if you're that one player that happens to make millions and like everyone else is like just doing what the college is telling them. There's going to be a sense of jealousy, or like they're going to, I know for me, like I would want that person to do something for me, and if that person doesn't, like maybe go take us out to dinner or whatever, whoops, I miss a block, or you know what I mean? Like there's gonna be like, no, I mean that stuff matters, and I think that's why like people really
sure
like Joe Burrow is that you could tell he's just a very team guy, to whereas like some people are just about themselves. So it's gonna really show like who people really are and if they're really a team guy or not. So it's definitely gonna be a different element. So
yeah, this is scary because it adds a whole new layer to these kids that as adults you struggle with.
Yeah. Well,
gotta pay taxes.
Well,
I gotta set up a business plan. It's now you're telling these kids they have to do that.
Well, but I think it's great for college students to learn how to run a business. The taxes thing, I would guess that if you're like a big time football university, you're gonna find somebody to manage the taxes for these guys to keep them out of trouble.
Yeah.
But like, the thing that I find funny is not like, oh, Quinn Ewers is making like $1 million, right? Because he's like the number one recruit, plays quarterback. If he becomes the starting quarterback, like I don't think the offensive lineman's going to complain that the starting quarterback's getting money. The thing that I think would be weird is like what if there's just like a backup linebacker who doesn't play, right? Who's just funny and just develops like a large following, and he's the guy that's making the money.
That's funny. That's funny you brought that up because in Michigan there's a backup player, and I don't know who he is or what he is, but he's got this huge Twitter following for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow Twitter has, he's somehow got some kind of endorsement deal with that. So yeah, that's right along with what you're saying there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like now what would that do to the locker room, Josh? Was like
it's a bluff.
No, this is
doesn't affect him. He's on the bench counting his money.
Well, but that's the thing. Like that was a big deal. I don't know what, like 5 or so years ago, where that college player opted to not play in college because he couldn't accept that, because he was making money off of YouTube, and they considered this is the whole NIL deal. and they said that was illegal. And like to a normal person, like that's ridiculous because it's separate from what he's actually doing in the field. It's actually, he's editing video. He like it's hard work that he's putting into, and he can't capitalize on it. That's like, that's so. It just seems to go against like what we believe in America. So like the fact that like, but to what you're saying, like if you have that talent and you can grow that audience and you're a local hero, it just they get what they deserve, right? So like to have a little bit is better to have nothing. So like I think in the grand scheme of things, for those that are able to do that, it's gonna be great. But that for those that don't have that talent and that have to rely on those like endorsements and stuff, it's gonna kind of suck. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it's great because you should be owed what you put into it. So like I think it's gonna, for like those local people, it's gonna be a great thing. And you're going to see, like, you're going to be able to, it's going to create a whole different, like, I guess, content, because now there's going to be more college athletes taking you behind the scenes, and we're going to see it in a whole different side because now there's going to be a big incentive to do it.
So if say you're like Ohio State then, and say there's like just some like 3-star dude or no star guy who's,
You wouldn't be at Ohio State.
no, this is my question to you though. Say there's like some low 3-star like slot receiver guy, right? But like he's got like this $3 million Twitter following and like some massive social media presence. Do you recruit him on your football team?
No, absolutely not, because the university's not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, but wouldn't he be like a guy that could help like your other guys build their business and be on the team?
That's a guy that Ohio State, Alabama are going to keep away with because they have that's a brand. But that's a guy that Cincinnati or like UC would want because that's going to get people in the stands. So I think that's where that unique like.
Oh right, like if you're like a brand guy, you can like level up with brands. Like you're like if you've got a big enough presence that maybe you get onto a better football team than you otherwise would.
Because like the way I look at
something,
the major colleges are basically low key NFL teams. Like they like if you go against the grain, they're going to get rid of you. Like they have no incentive to keep you. They have but if you're a smaller college, that's how you like it makes more sense for that type of college to do because they need that help. It is more of a partnership. So like that's where to me that's going to be the wild card and where it's going to be really interesting. And they're going to be able to get better talent that way too because what if you're a mid-tier guy? What if you have a little bit of both, right? What if you want to be able to show your personality and you can go to like a UC and actually play more? So in that way, I think it's going to help those smaller colleges versus like the bigger colleges where,
I don't like how you're saying mid-tier and UC. I mean, we've got a pretty good recruiting class.
I think that's a compliment, but I mean, hey, whatever.
They got a high 3-star average. They're doing great.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the bottom line is you got to be able to play football or whatever sport you happen to be doing now.
Not to make the money though, right? Like,
no, but let's,
I'm just saying, like, what if like the Holly Saunders of the world, and like you find that like the women's golf team is the team making all the name, image, and likeness money, like there's gonna be like significant winners in this, and it's just I don't foresee who the winners are gonna be. I just feel like it's gonna be something that we don't see coming, where it's just gonna be something. Some type of athlete is going to be making a lot more money than anybody thought possible, and it's going to be different,
But we all agree that it's good that they have this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the other thing, and this is something that I think will get Josh excited, is that it fixes the gap for like the college video games, right? So now,
yeah.
Now, if you're a video game company and you want to make a college football game, now it's simple. You license with the NCAA to get the uniforms, and then you have to license with the players to
Yeah.
get them in the game. and now you have a path to get all the players in the game, right?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be huge from a video game perspective. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of more obstacles to get through that, but once they figure it out, it's gonna be huge because like some of the older college games that they used to sell back in the day, after they stopped, like they go for like 10 times the amount they normally go for. So it's like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, I heard. I mean, like when the first, well, EA Sports announced that they're going to re-release the college football game in 2023, and the idea is that they were just going to use like nameless, faceless players. Now they don't have to. Now they can put all the players in it. They just have to pay them.
Or the important ones. You don't necessarily do all of them.
Well, but I mean, they do it with the NFL, so
Yeah, why
I'd
not?
imagine they figure out a way to do it.
I'm sure, but wouldn't they have to get like an organization, kind of like someone that represent everyone type deal to get that done?
You would probably have like a standard deal, like you give like everybody on the football team
$1,000 per or something. Yeah.
a copy of the game, some special hoodie, and like $500, and like you would get almost everybody on the football team, and then you'd have to pay the special guys a little bit more.
I think the majority of players that to have the opportunity to be in a game would just that alone would probably be enough for.
Yeah, that's what I think. I would do it for free.
I get it, but it just. But when you get to
I want my hoodie
and
I want a copy of the game, and then you can put me in the game.
Yeah, definitely get a copy.
Yeah, remember, NIL is not a collective bargaining agreement. It's all individual.
Yeah,
whatever they want to do or whatever they don't want to do.
But I would just imagine that, like, if you sent like the EA person to the locker room and be like, "Hey, we're coming out with a new video game. Who wants to be in? Sign this paper. We'll mail you a copy as soon as it comes out."
Hey, just give me that paper. I'm going to sign it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you would.
I don't think they would have no idea, but yep.
Yeah, you'd be like, wait a minute. Well, there are only 50 people on the team. How do we get like 200 signatures? All right. Well, so I guess we hit that pretty hard. Anything else?
I just want to say, for more college football content, hit that like button and subscribe if you're not already subscribed.
There you go.
That's all I got to say.
Wow.
Smart guy. All right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.